He can't avoid us forever. We were parked outside of Ezra Schmidt's house. Casey stared up at the darkened A-frame, arms crossed over her chest. He can't, she repeated, shaking her head, as if that could will him into existence. Maybe he skipped town, Maribel said from the back seat. He wouldn't do that, Casey replied. Why not? He gave you a camera he knew would kill you. He doesn't want to be implicated for murder, does he? Casey huffed. No one would believe him. Okay, look, let's just try again later, I cut in, starting the car. Until then, I think our next best option is to get the camera back. Maybe if we destroy it, it'll break this whole thing. Or maybe it'll kill us faster. Like destroying the photo, Maribel replied. They probably already threw it away, Casey added. Do you have a better idea? Both of them shook their heads. The drive back to CVS was completely silent. The three of us walked into the store, Brady's absence weighing down on us. A quick glance around, but photo guy wasn't there. There was just an older woman standing at the counter. We were here on Friday, Maribel started, with a disposable camera. Do you by any chance still have it? A disposable camera? I nodded. I haven't seen one of those things in years, she said, shaking her head. I don't know. We used to recycle them, I think. Recycle them? Maribel glanced at me. Yeah, I don't even think they melt them down. The plastic body is just like refilled with new film and sold again. It's how Kodak turned such a big profit on those things. I mean, a whole camera for $10, who could beat that, right? I mean, is there any chance you still have it somewhere? I interrupted. Maybe. I think we only do the whole recycling thing on Mondays. And those guys that come take the hazardous stuff, like with lithium batteries and whatnot, every other Wednesday. She continued muttering to herself as she crouched down, scanning the other side of the counter. What day did you say you came here again? Friday, I replied. Ah, you're in luck, I think. Is this it? She pulled out the camera. The three of us stared down at it. The camera stared back at us, lens glistening in the light. My stomach turned. Are you going to take it or not? Sorry. I grabbed the camera and the three of us hurried out of the store. Kids these days don't even say thank you, the woman muttered behind us. As I drove us back to my house, my spirits rose. We had the camera. Maybe bashing it to smithereens or throwing it in the fire would be all that it took. Destroy the cursed object, break the curse. It could be that simple. We could be free. Or maybe it would kill us all. Somehow, both those options sounded better than waiting for our inevitable deaths over the next few days. As soon as we got back, I grabbed the camera and made a beeline for the shed. My dad had everything in there. Hammers, mallets, a circular saw. Everything we could possibly need to destroy this thing. Casey and Maribel followed after me. I grabbed a hammer, hefting it in my hands. I think we should destroy it. That's my vote. Maribel and Casey glanced at each other. When you burned the photo, it was burning me, Maribel said, starting to pace. This thing, the photos at least, almost act like some sort of voodoo doll. If you destroy it, how do you know it won't kill us all instantly? I don't. But saving us or dying instantly both sound better than waiting around to die. I turned to Casey. What about you? She chewed on one of her Malibu pink fingernails. I don't know. I guess we gotta try destroying it. We're all gonna die anyway, right? 2-1, I told Maribel. Sorry. She crossed her arms. I grabbed 3 pairs of safety glasses off the wall and handed them out. Casey raised an eyebrow at me. Safety glasses? Really? If we survive this thing, do you want to be blind? No, but they look so stupid. She put them on, grimacing. Yuck. Maribel rolled her eyes, then replaced her own glasses with the safety ones. She gave me a hesitant thumbs up. I positioned the camera in the center of the work table. Then I raised the hammer. In the lens, I could see my tiny reflection, distorted by the spherical lens, like a fisheye view. Eyes wide, the hammer raised high above my head. I took a deep breath, and then I brought the hammer down. Thump, a direct hit. And yet, The camera didn't have the slightest dent in it. Shit. I raised the hammer again. Thump, and again. Thump. It was like the thing was made of steel. I went wild. I brought the hammer down again and again, arms flailing wildly. Maribel was saying something behind me, but I couldn't hear her over the blood rushing in my ears, the thumps of the hammer against the camera. "Benny!" Casey shrieked. And then I saw it, a thick dark liquid oozing out of the camera, seeping into the grooves of the wood, dripping off the edge of the table and onto the floor. My stomach turned. I flipped the camera over. The wet, sticky substance that looked so much like blood coated my fingertips, oozing from a seam on the side where the front and back panels connected. I raised the hammer and smashed at the back of it, then the front. I smashed it until I was exhausted, and my arms were sore and I couldn't lift the hammer again. The camera was still in perfect condition. "Let's go back to Ezra," Maribel said. "Maybe he's home now." I glanced back at the camera. Let me try one more thing. I reached down and grabbed the extension cord, plugged it in, flipped a switch, and the circular saw whirred to life. Casey and Maribel looked at me with wide eyes. I grabbed the camera, fingers safely on either side, and pushed it towards the blade. The screeching of the saw filled my ears, echoing in the small shed. "Benny, you're not really... We have to get rid of this thing," I shouted over the noise. "Benny, I can't keep waiting for us to die." I pushed the camera straight into the whirring, spinning blades. But when the plastic met the metal, it ratcheted and caught. A horrible grinding sound. What the... I pushed against the camera harder, and then my hands slipped. It happened so fast. 1 second, hands on the camera pushing. The next, the camera on the floor and blood, pain, so much, gushing onto the floor. Maribel and Casey screaming in my ears. The blade screeching, spinning red and silver, darkness pulsing through my vision. Nothing. I woke up in the emergency room, with several stitches on my right ring finger. I'd apparently sliced the tip of my finger and then fainted. So much blood, for such a small wound. I pictured my own blood, mixing and swirling with the dark, sticky ooze from the camera on the dusty floor of the shed. "Why didn't it kill me?" I asked. "I don't know," Casey replied. "It would have been easy for that saw to kill me, but it didn't." "I think it's working in order," Maribel said. I turned to her. She looked terrible, her normally brown skin ashen, deep circles under her eyes. "It's working in order. Brady was the first one photographed, right? And then the first one to die. You didn't die because you're not the next one in line." She sucked in a breath. "I am." I stared at her, my stomach twisting. We drove back to Ezra's house. It was still empty, so it was stakeout time. Maribel napped in the back seat while we picked up Thai food and then settled in front of Ezra's house, eating for what felt like the first time in days. As it turned out, we didn't have to wait long. Only an hour later, a beat-up green sedan pulled into the driveway. He was home. Casey woke Maribel while I wiped my hands and bagged up the trash. "Oh, what's that smell?" Maribel asked, waving her hand. "We got Thai while you were sleeping," I replied. She scowled at us. "Anyway, Ezra's home. Any ideas how to handle him?" I asked. "Well, I think Casey should wait in the car," she replied. "If he sees her, he's going to know why we're here." "Good idea." "And I think I have an idea of what to say," she said, swinging her door open. "Follow my lead." Maribel and I walked up the steps. The house was in complete disrepair. Cracks lined the walkway, and an old wind chime fluttered in the breeze, softly tinkling. However, they weren't lax about security. A sleek ring camera had been installed, staring blankly up at us. Maribel raised her hand to knock. Muffled footsteps came from inside, and then the door creaked open. A disheveled, short guy with messy dark hair peered up at us. "Can I help you?" Ezra was only a few years older than us, but he looked like he was a decade older, from the deep circles under his eyes and the stubble on his jaw. "Yeah," Maribel replied. "I'm Maribel and he's Benny. We're seniors at Lakewood High School. Can we come in for a second?" His eyes darted between us, and then a flicker of recognition as he stared at Maribel. "I've seen you before. You're in marching band, right?" She nodded, smiling. "Can we come in?" His eyes narrowed. "Why? You guys Jehovah's Witnesses now or something?" "We're interviewing alumni," Maribel cut in, her voice filled with fake confidence. I never knew Maribel had any acting skills, but I guess survival instincts had taken over, because she was completely convincing. "We're doing this whole project where the seniors are interviewing alumni to get an idea of what the real life looks like after high school. It's like a whole thing." A pause, and then Ezra stepped aside. "Okay, what the hell? Come on in. I got a few minutes." We stepped past him into a small, messy living room. Piles of mail, stacks of boxes, dirty dishes on the coffee table. The door clicked shut. "Sorry about the mess," Ezra started. What's the story with the camera you gave Casey?" Maribel asked. Ezra paled, and then he ran for the door. Time stood still. I stood, frozen in shock, one part of my brain screaming to move and tackle him, the other part terrified. Thankfully, Maribel was faster. She immediately leapt at him and tackled him to the floor. "Don't just stand there." I ran over and grabbed shoulders, keeping him pinned to the ground. "Brady is dead because of you," Maribel growled in his face. His eyes went wide. "Who?" "The camera killed him, and now it's going to kill all of us," I shouted. "No, I don't want you guys to die. I didn't want anyone to die except her." He pointed a shaking finger behind us. I turned around to see Casey standing there in the open doorway, arms crossed. "Thanks a lot," she muttered. "Do you know what Emma has gone through because of you?" he shouted. He tried to get up. I struggled to keep him down. "She had to drop out of college. She can't even play soccer anymore. Her coordination's all fucked up. She will never be the same. But you don't even care, do you? She was just another person you could tear down and fuck up, because that's the only thing you can do. It was middle school, okay? Everyone's mean in middle school," Casey shouted back. "Emma wasn't," he growled. "And neither was Brady or Benny or me. So why do we have to die, huh?" Maribel asked, leaning in so close I could see her spit flying onto his face. Ezra looked back at us, the anger fading from his face. "I'm sorry. I really am. I thought she would just use the camera for selfies. Like the vain bitch she is," he suddenly shouted, looking back at her. "And then she would die. I never thought she would bring anyone else into it." "Yeah, but you had to realize she'd probably take other pictures. She's not going to take 20 selfies in a row," I said. He narrowed his eyes at me. There was only one photo left on the camera. Maribel glanced at me. "It took a photo of each of us, all 4 of us. There was more than one photo." His face dropped. "Tell us how to stop it. We promise we won't turn you into the police or anything. They wouldn't believe us anyway." Maribel's voice began to shake. "Tell us, please." "But Casey still needs to die." "But Maribel and I don't," I shouted. "So tell us how to stop it." He shook his head. "Look, I am sorry for what I did, okay?" Casey said, stepping towards us. "I was really insecure back then, and I wasn't just mean to Emma. I was mean to everyone except Avery and Maya. It wasn't like I was singling out your sister. I'm sorry, I am." "You wouldn't be apologizing if your life didn't depend on it," Ezra spat. "Maribel's going to die next, Ezra. Are you really going to let her die? Or are you going to tell us how to stop it?" I asked. Ezra glanced at me, then sighed. "I don't know, okay? I got it online. Someone posted it on this online forum for supernatural stuff. I didn't even believe it at first myself. But then I took some pictures of ants, bugs, and they curled up and died. But I don't know how to stop it. I don't..." "You're lying," I snapped. "I'm not. I swear I'm not." "I think we need more than that," Casey said behind us, in a dark, gravelly voice I barely recognized as her own. I turned around to see her reaching into her bag and pulling out something shiny and black, the ratcheting sound of plastic gears fighting against each other. "Oh no, oh no." "Casey." Click. Ezra froze. "No, he said weakly. No, you didn't. Casey took a step back, her face stone cold. Now you're in this too. So let me ask you again. How do we stop this thing? Ezra paused, and for a horrifying moment, I thought she'd just killed an innocent man. But then he spoke. Take a photo of the camera itself, he replied. Set it up in front of a mirror. Make sure you're not in the photo. The camera will self-destruct, kill itself, if it's the only living thing in the photo. The camera is alive? Maribel asked weakly. The dark blood spilling out onto the work table flashed through my mind. Ezra nodded. But he told me there will be consequences for whoever destroys the camera. The curse itself will be gone. But there will be other things. What other things? I asked. I don't know. He didn't tell me. His eyes fell on Casey. I swear, this time, he didn't tell me. We dragged a stool into the bathroom upstairs. That's where the camera would sit, facing the mirror. The only problem now was pressing the button. There was no timer on the camera, so if we couldn't be in the picture, we had to do it with something non-living. A stick, maybe. Something. Anything. I was tearing through my closet when Maribel interrupted me. Benny? I turned around. Maribel was standing in the doorway holding up her photo. I stepped closer. It had changed. It was now a grainy black and white photo. Her, standing on a porch with her arms crossed, face slightly distorted by a fisheye lens. It was the photo from Ezra's Ring camera, taken less than an hour ago. No. We were running out of time. She could die any minute, any second. We need to get you somewhere safe, I said, grabbing her arm and pulling her out into the hallway. Brandon's room. My older brother's room had been cleared out for a year now. He was living in California for 5 years now with his boyfriend, and my parents were all too happy to remove every trace of him from the house. Only a dusty dresser sat in the corner, which could kill her if it fell on her. I pulled her towards the closet. It was completely empty, except for some wire shelves that were too light to cause any damage. Stay here until we get the picture, I said. I'm kinda claustrophobic. It'll only be like 10 minutes. You'll be safe. I started for the door. Benny, wait. I turned around. Maribel stood there, eyes red, tears rolling down her cheeks. She reached out and grabbed my hand, and then, without a word, she wrapped her arms around me in a hug, pulled back, and reached up and kissed me. For that single instant, it was just the two of us. No death, no camera, nothing. The entire universe could be crumbling, and it wouldn't matter. Just us. Two flickers of existence in the vastness of time and space, communing for a single moment. Benny! I looked up to see Casey in the doorway. What the fuck are you doing? I stepped back. Maribel, blushing, backed into the closet. I'll be right back, okay? I whispered to her, before the door snicked shut. It took a few minutes, but I was able to eventually bend a wire coat hanger from my closet into something that would press the button. Casey watched as I stood in the bathroom doorway, slowly lowering the bit of steel onto the button. Shit, I muttered as I missed it once, twice, 3 times. But then, on the 4th time, I made it. Click. Followed by a deafening crack. The mirror had cracked, in circular rings like someone had punched it or hit it with a crowbar, exactly where the camera was aimed. But it didn't matter. We did it. I ran into Brandon's room. We did it! I shouted, throwing the closet door open. My voice died in my throat. Maribel was on the floor, gasping for breath, face red, lips swollen and mottled, and then it all hit me like a truck. She'd kissed me. I'd eaten Thai peanut noodles, and Maribel was deathly allergic to peanuts. EpiPen! We need her EpiPen! I shouted, running downstairs. Casey followed at my heels. Does she have one in her purse? I don't know. When seconds of scanning turned up nothing, I raced out to the car. There her purse was, in the back seat. I yanked the door open and clawed through it. There it was, the gray and orange injector, under layers of tissues and dust. I grabbed it and bolted up the stairs, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd have a heart attack. Maribel was motionless on the floor. "How do you—" I started. "Give it to me!" she shouted, yanking it out of my hands. Shaking her head, she pulled off the safety cap and swung it hard into Maribel's outer thigh. 1, 2, 3. "Are you sure you're doing it right?" "My brother has one." I pulled out my phone and called 911. Maribel remained motionless on the floor. I ran over to her, pressing my fingers to her neck for a pulse. It sounded weak. I backed up, breathing hard, black dots dancing in my vision. And then I saw it. Maribel's photo, lying on the floor of the closet. No. It hadn't changed. Even though we'd destroyed the camera, it hadn't changed. It still showed her on Ezra's porch. "It didn't change," I said, shoving the photo in Casey's face. "Maybe the photos. Maybe they stay like that, after the camera's broken," Casey replied. She didn't sound convinced. "It doesn't mean she's going to die. Or maybe we were too late. We destroyed it, after the allergic reaction started." Casey didn't reply. Sirens pierced the air. And then, chaos. EMTs charging up the stairs, bursting into the bedroom. I watched as they worked on Maribel, checking her pulse, propping her up off the floor. And then the words I'd been waiting to hear. "She's breathing." They loaded her onto a stretcher and carried her down the stairs, then out the door. "Wait, is she going to be okay?" I asked, running out after them. "Honestly, I don't know. We have to get her to the hospital," the EMT told me. I followed him towards the ambulance, but he held a hand up. "Are you family?" he asked. "No. Sorry, kid." He jumped in the back and closed the doors. And that was it. Then the ambulance careened back into the street, lights flashing, siren wailing, and then silence. I stood there, frozen. She's not going to make it. We were too late. Her last photograph may have been the one on Ezra's porch, but the image that would be burned into my brain, forever, was this one. Her lying in the back of the ambulance, eyes closed, head twisted to the side, patchy red blotches all over her face and neck. Everyone dies at some point, even the person you're in love with. And with that reality comes some cold, hard facts. You will have a last kiss, a last hug, a last phone call, and a last time you ever see that person alive. I don't know how long I stood there in the driveway staring at the curve in the road where the ambulance had disappeared. But then, suddenly, Casey was tugging me back. "Come on," she said. "We need to make sure the camera was destroyed. If it was, maybe the curse is broken." I followed her back into the house, my stomach twisting as we climbed the stairs. We made our way down the dark hallway to the second-floor bathroom. Light spilled out from the skylight, but I still couldn't see the camera, just the shattered mirror. I forced myself to walk faster. And then I saw it. The camera was on the floor. It looked as if it had been exploded from the inside. Underneath its remains, seeping into the tile floor, was a pool of dark, thick liquid that resembled blood. The same stuff that had come out of the camera in the shed when I'd first tried to destroy it. My stomach turned. It seemed too easy. Just take the photo of itself and that's it. Besides, Ezra said there would be consequences, right? For the person who made the camera self-destruct? "We should check our photos, just to be really sure," Casey said, heading back downstairs. "Mine's in my purse." I listened to her go. Then I went into my bedroom. I'd left the photo tucked between a few books in my bookshelf. Between Fermat's Enigma and Mr. Tompkins in paperback, I eased out the photograph. It was creased slightly now, dented and warped. I flipped it over. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a blank page. Maybe complete darkness. A photo of nothing. Maybe the same image as before. Or maybe a glitchy photo of melting, warped colors, like the photo guy at CVS had described. Either way, I hadn't expected this. The photo had changed. It showed me standing on Ezra's porch. It matched Maribel's. I swallowed, my throat dry. If the camera was killing us in order, and my last photo was now the porch photo. That proved that Maribel was going to die at any second, and then the camera was going to move on to me immediately. There were security cameras in the hospital, for example, so I wouldn't live long enough to visit her there. Cameras at a funeral, too. Security cameras at tolls, at stoplights, at stores. You can't go very long without being surveilled. She was going to die any minute, and I'd be right after her. The photo shook in my hands as my fingers trembled. The creak of a floorboard sounded behind me. I turned around to see Casey standing in the doorway. "Hey," I said, not knowing what else to say. I held up the photo. "It changed. I'm next." "Mine changed too," she replied in a small voice. "What too?" She didn't reply. She just stood in the doorway, unmoving, her lower lip trembling. "Casey, it works in order, right? And I'm last because I was photographed last?" she asked. But her voice was different, an edge to it, an undercurrent of panic, of fear, of something. "Yeah," I replied. "But Maribel's probably still alive. She only left in the ambulance a few minutes ago." She took another step into the room, standing unnaturally straight, eye contact unwavering. "If we changed the order, if someone else died before Maribel, we'd break the curse." My heart sank as the pieces slowly fit together in my mind. "What exactly are you getting at?" "I'm sorry," she replied. And then she lunged at me. Metal glinted. She was holding my mom's chef knife in the air, bringing it down towards me. "Casey!" I screamed. I grabbed her wrist and locked my arm, using all my strength to keep her back. God, she was strong for a 120-pound cheerleader. The silver blade shivered in the air. "What are you? If you die before Maribel, it'll screw up the order. The camera will be proven wrong," she said through gritted teeth. "And then I won't die." "You don't even know if that's true." "I'm willing to try." With a gasp, she yanked her hand back. The action surprised me so much, she was able to pull out of my grip, then darted towards me again, slashing the knife through the air. It made a horrible whoosh sound next to my ear. I grabbed her arms again, and we twisted and struggled, wobbling back and forth in the small room. A crash as my elbow knocked over a turtle sculpture I'd made in 8th grade. A snap of pain as my hip hit the corner of my desk. The floor shook. I got my hand on the knife and pulled as hard as I could. I got it. The knife was in my hands now. I backed away, panting, and held it up in a defensive stance. "I swear, Casey, if you come any closer..." She looked at me, her blue eyes wild, and then, screaming, catapulted towards me. I fell to the ground. In a flash, her hands wrapped around my neck and squeezed. I grabbed the knife. Metal hit flesh. I scrambled out from underneath her. Casey rolled off of me, falling to the ground, blooming red stain in the middle of her pink t-shirt. Her eyes roved over the room, staring up at the ceiling as she fought for the last gasps of her life. "I'm so sorry," I said, scrambling up and backing away. "Casey, For a second, her blue eyes flicked to mine. "Fuck you, Benny," she whispered. And then her eyes went blank. I sped to the hospital, trees and grass whipping by me in a blur. My photo sat in the passenger seat, but now it was perfectly blank, white as a clean sheet of paper. I ran through the hospital hallways, my heart pounding, hoping I wasn't too late. And then I found her. Maribel lay in a hospital bed, her normally light brown skin tinged ashy gray. Her parents sat next to her, stone-faced, holding her hand. "Is she..." Her mother glanced up at me. "The doctor says she'll be okay," she said, her voice hoarse. But it was a close call, a very close call. I approached her. Her face looked so peaceful, eyes closed, dark curls splayed out over the pillow. I reached for her hand, then thought better of it. Who knew what microscopic particles were still on my hands, jump-starting the reaction again? Instead, I kept my distance, just watching her, letting this image overwrite the one of her in the ambulance, motionless on a stretcher, as paramedics frantically worked around her. Was Casey right? Changing the order? Proving the camera wrong? Was that all it took to break free? I left after a few minutes, from Maribel's parents' stares. I don't think I was particularly welcome there. I walked out of the hospital, my heart soaring. A faint drizzle of rain began to fall, dark clouds gathering overhead. I got in the car, slammed the door, and picked up the photo for the last time. Just a piece of paper. I took a deep breath and ripped it straight in two. Then I started the car and pulled back onto the road. I knew I had a long way ahead of me. The police would be at my house by now, finding Casey's body. It would be hard to prove that I killed a woman a foot shorter than me in self-defense. But Maribel was alive. She would be okay. And somehow that was all that mattered. Maybe that's what Ezra was talking about, when he said whoever destroyed the camera would face consequences. Maybe the layers of fate and destiny all pull towards you like a magnet, lining things up so that you won't ever be free. Not really. Just as the camera orchestrates the deaths of those it photographs, it also lines up a plot of revenge on the person who destroyed it. But it didn't matter. The curse was broken, and the camera wouldn't hurt anyone ever again. When I reached the highway, I pulled down the window and let the two pieces of photograph flutter away into the wind.